the 2018 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the race for Public Service Commission District 3.
Welcome. I'm Ricky Bevington, senior anchor and correspondent, as well as the local host of All Things Considered at Georgia Public Broadcasting. You are watching the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting in Atlanta. This is the runoff debate among candidates for Public Service Commission District 3. The 3rd district includes Fulton, DeKalb, Rockdale, and Clayton counties. For those of you who are not sure what the Public Service Commissioners do, well, when you turn on the lights, pick up the phone, cook dinner, your Public Service Commissioners determine the amount that you pay for your electricity, telecommunications, and natural gas. And we'll meet the candidates now. They are in alphabetical order: Chuck Eaton, a Republican and a current member of the Georgia Public Service Commission, representing District 3, and Lindy Miller, a Democrat and a business executive and co-founder of a renewable energy company that works to give more energy choices to schools, small businesses, and nonprofits. And we will now meet our panelists. Anastasia Ondieki is a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Christy Swartz is a reporter covering utilities and energy in the Southeast for E&E News. And we will get started. For the rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. To start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question, and Anastasia Ondieki, you get the first question, to Lindy Miller.
Good morning, Lindy.
Good morning.
The construction of Plant Vogel has been a key issue in this election. If elected, how would you approach any future delays or cost overruns?
So, thank you so much, first of all, to the Atlanta Press Club for having us here. I want to start by saying we have the 3rd highest energy bills in the country. That is a fact. Plant Vogel is now one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in the history of the United States. It is years behind schedule, and it is billions of dollars over budget. Under the leadership of my opponent, he has failed to put in place any meaningful incentives to finish the project on time and on budget. Now, the very folks who are profiting from this project have invested $750,000 into our state at the last minute in an attempt to buy the election. If elected, I will stand up and ask tough questions and make sure that consumers do not pay for costly mistakes.
Thank you, Lindy Miller. Christy Swartz, please ask a question to Chuck Eaton.
Good morning. If Georgia Power came to you with a proposal for a full-service electric vehicle program, and I'm talking about charging stations, marketing, education, things like that, would you support that? And would you allow Georgia Power to ask for cost recovery on all of those elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually driven an electric car for 7 years now. And so I believe in the technology, believe in what it's doing. The idea of, I think what you're asking is, of course, putting the, whether Georgia Power does it on their own, of course, is their own prerogative, but the question of whether we put it into rate base, that sort of trial balloon was floated a couple years ago. I was personally not very keen on having other ratepayers pay for these charging stations and other folks' incentives through electric cars, keeping in mind I'm an electric car driver. And so at this juncture, I would not be supportive of putting any sort of that added expense into our rate base when it comes to expanding the charging car network.
Thank you both. That concludes the first portion of this debate. The candidates will now ask a question to their opponent, and here's how it works. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask a question, 60 seconds to respond, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal. 30, 60, 30. And by random selection, Chuck Eaton, you have the first question.
Okay. Lindy, you mentioned it earlier, and it seems like the primary focus of your campaign has been based on this, I guess, this Wallet Hub study, which includes in the energy cost many things that the Public Service Commission simply doesn't regulate, such as gasoline prices and how much somebody uses their air conditioning. And so, while I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, I mean, you do understand that the Public Service Commission does not regulate gasoline prices or how much people use their air conditioning. Don't you?
What is your question?
Do you understand that we don't regulate those items?
Thank you for the question, Chuck. I am very, very familiar with what the Public Service Commission regulates. We now have, as the Wallet Hub study has shown, the third highest bills in the country. We can talk simply about electricity bills that families across Georgia have. We have the fourth highest electricity bills in the country. Now, we can say you can hide behind distractions like you can't control the weather, you can't control gas prices, but there are a lot of things that the Public Service Commission can do. For example, we could be investing in energy efficiency, a resource that states around this country have invested in well beyond what we've done. We are 35th in the country in terms of investing in making our homes and businesses more energy efficient, which would bring down our bills and reduce our air conditioning requirements. We're not the only state with cold winters and hot summers. As well, we could invest in electric vehicle charging infrastructure and reduce the burden that gasoline costs have on our families.
5 seconds. Thank you very much. And a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, I think the problem is, even from that you don't really know what goes on at the Public Service Commission. I mean, this Wallet Hub study cites gasoline prices, and, electric usage. And the majority of the southeastern states use quite a bit of electricity. It's a hot, humid climate to live in. As far as energy efficiency, we have been investing in energy efficiency. We spend $50 to $60 million a year authorized by the Public Service Commission to invest in energy efficiency.
5 seconds. Thank you so much. Lindy Miller, you may ask a question.
Thank you so much. My question for Chuck is this. You have had 12 years on the commission. In that time, you've added nearly $30 to the average family's monthly electric bill. That is over $300 a year. And our energy bills are the third highest in the country. Yesterday, we learned that an outside group funded by big utilities and the nuclear industry has pumped $750,000 into getting you reelected. You may claim ignorance of knowing that this was going on. So my question is why? Why do you think they want you reelected so badly?
I think it's true hypocrisy here that, the only third-party group that supported candidates in the general election supported my opponent. So there was third-party play in there. Of course, I've been outspent greatly in this election, so to complain about it now at this juncture just seems to be the height of hypocrisy. I've worked with Governor Deal to create 750,000 new jobs. Our electric rates are below the national average. The average bill has not gone up one dime in 7 years. And so, again, we live in a very hot and humid climate. I can't control the fact that people like to use their air conditioners, and I wouldn't propose to do that. I would be concerned about somebody who is so focused on usage. At some point, they may want to place their hand on your air conditioner and decide what setting you can put it at. I believe people should use their air conditioning as much as they'd like.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
So as far as I understand it, the Conservatives for Energy Freedom in the general election that you're referring to, Chuck, was a group of conservatives who don't like the big government tax and spend republicanism that they see currently at the commission. They're mad at how irresponsible you've been with our money. I think that the $750,000 that was dumped into Georgia this week was dumped because they want you reelected because you won't stand up and ask tough questions on behalf of Georgia consumers. They know what they're getting after 12 years, and so do we. The third highest bills in the country.
Thank you both very much. That concludes the second round. For those just joining us, this is the runoff debate between candidates for Public Service Commission District 3. And we will now go back to our panel to ask questions to the candidate of her choice until we run out of time. And as a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidates. I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. We have a very capable panel, and I look forward to hearing your questions, ladies. Anastasia Ondieki, you get the first question.
So my question will be to Chuck Eaton. There is talk on the solar front about whether states should mandate power companies to get a percentage of their power from solar. What should the PSC do to help consumers have a cost-effective way to install solar on their rooftops?
Well, Georgia's the 10th most solar state in the country now, so we've put in place some incredible programs, and we did it in a very rational and business-like manner, which didn't put any upward pressure on our rates. And we've done a combination of utility scale and small scale solar. The utility scale solar has come in incredibly competitive. This is where we're putting in solar down in South Georgia and on many farms. I think that it's a bigger hurdle when it comes to the smaller scale distributive solar that you speak of. It's a harder argument to make when it comes to putting upward pressure on the rates. We have done some of it, but we have to be cautious. We don't want it to be a situation where, residents that don't have solar are subsidizing other people with solar. So, we've managed to keep this without putting upward pressure on the rates, and I want to continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Christy Swartz.
This question is for Ms. Miller, and I'm actually going to riff off of that and talk about the cost-shifting argument, which, for those who aren't familiar, that's the argument that the people who don't have solar wind up subsidizing the ones who do. And so I'm curious how you're going to make all sorts of renewable energy options available to low-income families, people on fixed incomes, and renters who typically have tougher time finding access to cheaper energy sources.
Absolutely. Well, the challenge that we have today in Georgia, of course, as I've mentioned before, is that we have the third highest bills in the country. And there are several ways that we could reduce the costs and the burdens on families. Atlanta currently has the fourth highest energy burden of anywhere in the United States, meaning people pay more to meet their energy needs than anywhere else. If we invest in energy efficiency programs to make our homes more energy efficient, we will bring down our bills. Also, Georgia's energy, only 1% of our energy is generated with solar. We could be doing so much more. And our current commission and my opponent over 12 years has done far too little to create the incentives in this state to expand our solar. We could expedite the READY program, doing more utility scale solar than just 1%. We could be allowing for community solar programs, which would expand the reach and accessibility for all communities in Georgia to access this advanced energy economy coming at us like a train.
Thank you so much. Anastasia.
So this question will be to Lindy Miller. A newly released federal government report shows the implications climate change could have on our economy. How should the PSC deal with concerns about the economic cost of climate change as it plans new sources of power in the state?
Thank you so much, Anastasia. One of the challenges that we have had is that our commissioners have been completely bought and paid for by the traditional forms of energy generation. So the $750,000 that was thrown into this race this week, coming from the nuclear and utility industry in support of my opponent, is specifically to continue the same path that we've been on. But we are in a new world where we need new solutions. We can't just create billion-dollar projects, $20 billion projects, and dump more poles into the ground. We need to be investing in resilience, making sure that if we see hurricanes like North Carolina did, that our coal ash ponds aren't going to put our farms at risk. We need retirement plans for those coal ash ponds. We need to make sure that we have distributed generation in our grid around critical infrastructure so that our hospitals, our schools, our government buildings are resilient no matter what faces us. Our commission could do so much more.
Thank you. Christy Swartz.
Commissioner Eaton, this is for you. We talked during the last debate a little bit about the IRP, and you mentioned having diverse fuel resources and included energy efficiency in that. So the current model that's being used is also very, very arcane, and it's basically stacked against energy efficiency. But there are other electric companies in other states, including some in the Southeast, that are looking at new models that actually kind of look at energy efficiency as a separate resource. Would you be willing to talk to Georgia Power about overhauling the really old modeling system for this?
I mean, of course, I'm always willing to listen to new ideas when it comes to energy efficiency. I mean, we're spending between $50 and $60 million a year on it already. I mean, the rub with it, or the issue with it, of course, is you have major manufacturers and businesses here and job creators in the state that look at what we're doing when we're trying to attract them. And there's a number of them that are worried because they've already on their own invested in energy efficiency. And they're concerned, frankly, about subsidizing competitors. So when we talk in terms of energy efficiency and incentivize that, what we're really talking about is subsidizing it, incentivizing it out of the rate base. And so you have many manufacturers out there that are opposed to that idea because they're doing everything they can to be competitive and efficient now. And their question is, when they come in to discuss this with us, why should I, now that I've taken every step to make my plant efficient, go out and subsidize one of my competitors to make them more efficient?
Time. Thank you. A rebuttal?
I believe that my opponent is hiding behind the real facts. The real facts are that while we may spend $56 million on energy efficiency, that is far below the over 1% that other utilities are spending on energy efficiency in other states. We need to do better to remain competitive. And if you want to talk about job creation competition, I'd like to talk about your job. I'd like to talk about the fact that you're not doing your job to make this state competitive with respect to energy efficiency.
Thank you. Anastasia.
This question will be to Chuck Eaton. Besides Vogtle, Georgia Power has explored possibilities of building a new nuclear power plant south of Columbus. Meanwhile, the price tag for Vogtle continues to rise, and the project is billions of dollars over budget. Would you support more nuclear power in the state? And what would you do differently this time to ensure ratepayers are safeguarded from future cost overruns?
We need nuclear power as part of the mix for clean, carbon-free, sustainable energy. And we would have been in an extremely difficult position when it comes to the Clean Power Plan had we not implemented nuclear. And I expect in the future we will probably have carbon restraints coming back out of Washington at some point. And so I think that nuclear does need to be part of the mix. Now, will I support it in the future? That's a difficult question because it's a 2,000 megawatt project. Right now, we're a little bit long on capacity to begin with, so I think it will be a ways down the road before we are looking at any sort of investment in major capacity out there. But I always believe that nuclear should be part of the mix.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
For those of us who aren't familiar with nuclear power, can you contextualize a 2,000 megawatt project?
Oh, God.
Not to get too wonky, but please help us understand what that means in your response.
I mean, it's a very large project.
Okay, that's good to help.
I would say it would be the largest megawatt project that we have going out there in the grid.
Okay.
Out there. So
thank you very much.
It would be the largest we have.
For helping us understand. Okay, thanks. Christy Swartz.
Ms. Miller, this question's for you. So neighboring states such as South Carolina and Florida, their public service commissions and or their legislatures have now adopted leasing programs for rooftop solar that are more innovative than the law that was passed in Georgia a couple of years ago. And as a result of that, rooftop solar has come on more in those states. And it's been something where all the stakeholders, including the utilities, have been at the table. So as we're getting into next year when Georgia Power has to file their long-term energy plan, I'm curious how you would work with them, again, to ensure that more customers have more access to cleaner energy sources or self-sufficient energy sources and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, like I said before, only 1% of our energy comes from solar. And you've now mentioned, Christy, we in Georgia are falling behind our neighboring states. We need to do more to open the markets for rooftop and distributed not just because the market is demanding it and because costs have come down and people want the freedom to meet their energy needs in the way that they want, but also because we need a more resilient grid. We need to prepare for unexpected weather events. We need to ensure that our critical infrastructure, like hospitals, like schools, like government buildings, can stay open in the event that we have grid outages. And that market needs to open up. As you know, I co-founded a renewable energy company, so I saw the obstacles firsthand. Now I've sold most of my shares and I'll sell them if elected, but I will work hard to bring more solar to Georgia to diversify our energy.
Time. Thank you. Chuck Eaton, would you like a 30-second rebuttal?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I mentioned before, Georgia's 10th in the country when it comes to solar, so we're up there quite a bit. And what we're talking about, when we're talking about incentivizing more of the rooftop solar, which is the most expensive type, we're really talking about one set of ratepayers subsidizing another set. And we don't want to be in a situation like a California that has all sorts of solar mandates, and their rates, of course, are 60% higher than they are in Georgia. So we've done a phenomenal job here in Georgia. We've gotten to 10th in the country, but I think we need to be rational about it and don't put upward pressure on our rates.
Thank you very much. Anastasia Ondieki.
So this question is for Lindy Miller.
Yes.
If elected on December 4th, you would be a Democrat working alongside 4 Republican commissioners. How would you work across party lines to ensure that you implement the changes you have mentioned during your campaign?
Thank you so much for that question. It's probably one of the most common questions I get. How would you work across party lines? In most states, this seat is not a partisan seat. In fact, in most states, this is not even an elected seat. It is appointed because they understand that you need to be qualified to sit in these seats. I have found in my long business career of over 15 years that you don't have the luxury not to work with people when you can find consensus because you might disagree on other things. I am a Democrat running as a Democrat, but this seat is about kitchen table issues, and I know that I will find many areas of common ground to advance the interests of consumers and this state.
Before we wrap up, Chuck Eaton, would you like a 30-second rebuttal?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm the very first time the commission had an opportunity to elect its chairman in 20 years, I was elected the chairman. And I was elected that until I was term limited out. So I'm a consensus builder. I work very well with my colleagues. I have an extensive business background. I have an accounting degree and also a law degree. Many of these issues we work on are very financial based and legal based. And I believe I bring a wealth of experience and have shown that I play nicely with others. So.
Okay, thank you both. And that is all the time we have for questions. Each candidate now has 60 seconds for a closing statement. Chuck Eaton, you get the first closing statement.
Sure. I'm a husband, a father, and a foster parent. And my family's invested in this state. I worked to create 750,000 jobs with Governor Nathan Deal. And I want to continue working with my good friend, Governor-elect Brian Kemp, doing everything we can do to ensure prosperity in our state. I'm honored to have the support of labor, business, and Georgians all over the state. I mean, think about that. That's unheard of, to have the support of labor and business and Georgians across the state. And what they all have in common is they want to continue this prosperity here in Georgia. And they know that I'm the person for that job. I want to continue my role as the consumer watchdog on the commission. And I will continue to fight for competitive rates and make sure that we're below the national average. So my name is Chuck Eaton, and I'm asking you for your vote December 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindy Miller, statement.
Georgia families now pay the 3rd highest bills in the country. We do not have a watchdog on the commission, as my opponent claims. Rather, my opponent is listening to the special interests who write them checks, not the people who pay the bills. Yesterday, we learned that an outside group poured $750,000 into getting my opponent reelected. Now, what we're seeing is an attempt to buy an election in Georgia. It's shocking. But I'm not surprised. See, my opponent's already taken over 300 grand from special interests. And when their projects go over budget, he raises our bills to cover their mistakes. But we are fighting back. Our campaign is powered by people. Thousands of Georgians, school bus drivers and nurses and veterans and small business owners have put their hard-earned money and precious time into this vision. After 12 years, it is time for new leadership that puts people over profits. That's why our supporters say, chuck him out. It's Miller time.
Thank you both. That concludes our debate. We would like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, December 4th, and early voting is already underway. Please visit your county elections office to determine the early voting locations and times in your area. Our thanks to the candidates and to the panel of journalists. I would also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club and Georgia Public Broadcasting for arranging today's debate. For more information on the full schedule of general election runoff debates, please visit atlantapressclub.org. This debate will be archived there and on Georgia Public Broadcasting's website, which is gpb.org. I'm Ricky Bevington. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.